This is a respectful message to the judges in the Supreme Court and in the High Court. They should bear in mind that they sit there and dispense justice on and for behalf of the people of Ghana, not for their own behalf. And they must be mindful of public policy. The judges would not want to see public outcry against them.
Hello and welcome to this important discussion on the LGBTQ community and the question of whether sexual preference is a human rights issue in Ghana. Today we turn our attention to a specific context, examining the challenges and perspectives within the Ghanaian society. While Ghana's constitution guarantees certain fundamental rights and freedoms to all its citizens, including the right to dignity, equality, and non-discrimination, discussions surrounding sexual orientation have been contentious. Public sentiment in Ghana has been largely conservative on matters related to homosexuality, reflecting deep-rooted societal and cultural beliefs. The question of whether sexual preference is a human rights issue in Ghana requires careful consideration of both legal and societal dimensions. This is Legal Agenda, and my name is Matilda Boateng Nartey. I have with me here in the studio Honorable Nartey George. He's the MP for Ningo Prampram and part of the 8 MPs spearheading the Anti-LGBTQ Bill. Honorable, you are welcome.
Thank you very much.
You tabled before Parliament, but it was put on hold because of the court case. Looking at this back and forth, do you think this bill will ever be passed?
Well, let me say hi to our viewers, and I believe that the bill will be passed this year. Without prejudice to the court case, I hold the view that the 3 distinct arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, were equally vested with powers. It is the power and right by the Constitution of Parliament to pass legislation.
Definitely.
It is not the role of the judiciary to tell Parliament how to pass legislation. When Parliament passes legislation, the judiciary can come back and say you got it wrong in the way in which you did it. But the judiciary cannot come and tell Parliament that you cannot pass this law or you should pass this law this way. No. For example, Parliament recently, or last year or 2 years ago, Parliament passed the law, that the Narcotics Act, the law that made it possible for you to grow marijuana for industrial purposes. Someone went to court, and the courts have said that Parliament did not go through the right process. So that law has been set aside. That's the rule of the judiciary. But the judiciary cannot tell Parliament, whilst it is in the process of passing a law, that you cannot pass a law. I mean, that would be an overreach. We don't go to the judges and tell them you should interpret the law this way. The judges don't go to the executive and tell them in cabinet that cabinet cannot discuss this matter.
I agree.
You get me? So, I mean, it just shows you the desperation. And I expect the judiciary to dispose of this case with expedition and throw it out and allow and have respect for the separation of powers.
But I didn't see you react or respond to that when you were told that you have to.
No, what I was told in Parliament was they are waiting for the Speaker, because it was the Deputy Speaker who was presiding.
All right.
And when I raised the matter, Afenyo Makin, who is Deputy Leader, rose and drew the attention of the Speaker, the Deputy Speaker, Joseph Osewusu, who was presiding, that the Speaker has been sued personally. And so they wanted to hear from the Speaker on what the way forward will be. And at the time I had raised it, the Speaker was up north in the northern part of Ghana, celebrating Parliament's 30th anniversary. There are a list of programs that had been lined up, so he was out there. The Speaker is back in Accra. We'll be raising the issue with the Speaker again to hear what direction he will be given, because ultimately it is the Speaker's direction to the House that will carry sway. And I want to believe that the Speaker is not going to make Parliament subservient to a court case. Absolutely not.
So what are the timelines? When do you think?
Well, it comes back to the Speaker. Once the Speaker gives us the green light, I'm sure that within 4 weeks we should be able to complete all the processes on the floor of the House.
All right. But coming back to when this bill will ever be passed, When did you table this bill, the 8 of you, to Parliament?
I believe it was in 2021.
And we are in 2023.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's been too long? I mean, if
The
it
right,
will ever be passed.
the Right to Information Bill spent 20 years in Parliament. Interstate Succession Bill is 18 years in Parliament. There are several laws that government has brought to Parliament that are 6 years, 10 years in Parliament. So if a private member's bill, and government has more power, government can pass bills faster because they've got more resources than individuals. If government legislation have taken those long, and the private members bill, don't forget, there's only one private members bill that has passed in Parliament.
Okay.
And that was in 2020. Okay. And even that one, it was an amendment to an existing legislation. It wasn't a full legislation on its own. This is the first time a full legislation is coming as a private member's bill. So it's still a novel practice Parliament is going through. And because of how sensitive this matter is, and because the LGBTQ community decided to do what we call filibustering. Filibustering is a parliamentary process where you intentionally put cogs in the wheel of Parliament. You slow down the process of Parliament. So this bill received over 180 petitions. Look, when I saw what the clerks were doing, some of the petitions, you see the name and address from France. You see the whole petition, about 20-something pages. Then there's another petition from Australia. And when you take the petition, the only difference in the two petitions is the address. Same context, same text. They just shared it across and brought it. And you see, I said to the committee, let's take our time. Because we know they will go to court and try to say that we didn't go through the processes, or we fast-tracked the processes, or we jumped the certain process. We will take our time and review every single one of the over 180 memos that came. So we took our time. That took almost a year and a half to do. You understand me? And so the bill is where we've gotten to right now. I would say that we are done with about 80% of the bill. Okay. Because the main work is at the committee level. When it comes to the plenary, it's just amendments that are going to be, and most of the amendments that have been tabled are amendments that have been agreed between the committee and the sponsors. We may have a few new amendments that will come on the floor, but I don't envisage that those will take us anywhere or would substantially change or would delay the process by anything. So that's why I say I believe that once we start the process of the second reading, within 4 weeks we'll be done.
And that is what, that's why someone has sued the Speaker of Parliament. So I don't know.
That suit is dead on arrival as far as I'm concerned, without prejudice to the courts. I mean, the courts cannot tell Parliament. The courts should wait. When we pass our bill, then they should determine what is wrong with our processes. But we are confident that we've taken to, because look, for them to suggest the government of the suits in court without going into the merits of the case is that the Speaker should have caused a financial,
more like consider the financial implications,
and claim that the bill in its current shape and form imposes a cost on the consolidated fund in breach of the Constitution. Ask the person who went to court. They say he's a farmer. There are two cases, one in the High Court by a farmer and one by another person from Central Region. In the Supreme Court. The farmer should be interested.
Amanda Odoy.
Yes, we'll come to Dr. Amanda Odoy. But the farmer should be interested in the rain that is falling and planting his crops. And not determining for Parliament how Parliament does its business, because he has absolutely no expertise there. Because the question you should ask him is, which bill is he talking about?
Okay.
Because again, don't forget that the processes, and that's why I said I don't want to get into the merits of the case. Even if the case will be heard, the Speaker of Parliament is our longest serving MP in this country. 28 years, 7 terms. He understands Parliament even better than Parliament itself. Because he's an institution. And you think that he will sit back and he's a lawyer, very senior lawyer at that. He will sit back and not comply with the constitutional requirements. I mean, people are tickling themselves. Those who are hiding behind these elements to go to court can proceed. But like I said, it's just part of the processes to slow it down.
Okay.
But you see, when you think that you can slow down a moving train, you'll get crashed.
So to you, that's why I want to know because the timeline.
I can tell you point blank. No, that's not with me. That's with the Speaker to take the decision. The Speaker will take the decision. I said once the Speaker takes the decision for us to start, within 4 weeks we'll complete it. And look, this is a respectful message to the judges in the Supreme Court and in the High Court. They should bear in mind that they sit there and dispense justice on and for behalf of the people of Ghana, not for their own behalf. And they must be mindful of public policy. The judges would not want to see public outcry against them. Because again, don't forget that our judiciary is one element of our governance system that people lack a lot of trust and faith in. Because the judiciary has not necessarily comported itself in the best of manner in previous cases. So this again will be another test case for the judiciary as to whether the judiciary will make themselves bastions of our democracy and dispense justice on behalf of the people of Ghana, or whether there will be considerations of the LGBTQ cabal.
Definitely.
It is up for us to see. We'll be looking at the judges to see. Especially now that we have a new Chief Justice, we'll see how she will operate. This will be her first landmark issues you may have to deal with.
Right. So, by passing this bill, looking at where the world is going, are you not taking Ghana backwards, like kind of taking Ghana back in terms of, because the world is evolving kind of, and everyone, especially even if it's enshrined in our constitution, how people, the fact that we should respect the fundamental rights of people. And so are you, by this bill, protecting their rights, their freedoms, and their choices?
Okay, two questions you've asked. Are we taking Ghana backwards, and are we respecting rights?
Their choices, their freedoms.
I'll come to that.
All right.
I'll start with, are we taking Ghana backwards? Actually, absolutely not. In fact, Ghana is leading the trail to where the world is going. The world is actually going to a place where the world is beginning to call this mental disability that people term as homosexuality.
Okay.
The world is going to a place where they are telling them that you cannot shove this down our throat. I'll give you a typical example. In this year, this month, they call this month the month they celebrate the insanity that they call homosexuality across the world. But in the United States,
Honorable, can you correct that? You said insanity.
Yes, I regard it as an insanity. But, and for your information, it was considered by the American Psychologist Association as a mental disorder until 1974. It was in 1974 that homosexuality was taken out of the manual, the DSM, which is the manual for psychiatric conditions. It was only in 1974 that homosexuality was taken out, and it was not taken out on the basis of science. It was taken out on the basis of lobbying.
Okay.
So the science that determined that it was a mental condition has not been refuted.
Okay.
So if I call it insanity, it is scientifically proven. Because the only reason why the APA, the American Psychologists Association, took it off the manual was not on the basis of science. It being on the basis of science was that it was a mental condition like schizophrenia. But in 1974, they took it out of that manual on the basis of lobbying and social pressure, not on the basis of science. I'm speaking to the science.
Okay.
And so when I call it insanity, it is not derogatory. I'm speaking facts.
Okay.
Good. Now, if you go to Florida, for example, the Florida government the governor signed legislation backed by the Congress, the state Congress, that banned transgender pride shows in the US. And so, and even set limits and said that any business that allowed people to come, or anybody under 21 to attend any pride event or transgender gay, this dress up things that they do, your business will close down and fined. That's in the United States. They are moving towards where we already are. The United States Armed Forces, the Secretary of Defense, actually cancelled a pride parade on a US Air Force base, saying that the Pentagon will not subscribe and allow the respected US Armed Forces to be dragged down that road.
When was this?
Last month. I can send you the link
to
all of this. I mean, there's evidence of all of this. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the US Secretary of Defense cancelled a pride concert on a US Air Force base. So where we sit today as Ghana, the world is catching up with us. Now you say, are we taking away rights?
Choices and their freedoms.
Well, the Constitution doesn't talk about choices. We're governed by law, the 1992 Constitution.
Yeah.
The 1992 Constitution talks about freedoms. It gives certain freedoms to the individual. But it's very clear that no freedom is absolute. The enjoyment of your freedom is contingent on the fact that it does not affect the public good. Now let me read to you what the Constitution says in Article 39 of the Ghanaian Constitution. It says in 39(2) of the 1992 Constitution, the state shall ensure the appropriate customary and cultural values are adapted and developed as an integral part of the growing needs of the society as a whole, and in particular that traditional practices which are injurious to the health and well-being of the person are abolished. In 39(1), it says the state shall take steps to encourage the integration of appropriate customary values into the fabric of national life through formal and informal education, and a conscious introduction of cultural dimensions to relevant aspects of national planning. So clearly, when we take this stance, we are in line with the Constitution, because and several international legislation supports the position that myself and my colleagues are taking, that nobody's rights are absolute. Your rights are subject to public morals, public health, public policy, and the betterment of society. Now, when people say that they have a right, people have a right to eat. But your right to food does not give you the right to go and steal somebody's food. So you have a right to do whatever you want to do, but that right is not given, is not a carte blanche. Society has laws, and laws determine what is acceptable. And this is one such law. If society agrees that this law is reflective of our wishes and aspirations, everybody must abide by it. And the last search by the CDD showed that 93% of Ghanaians are against homosexuality. So any law that is against homosexuality, by inference, enjoys 93% support from the Ghanaian people. How then would you say that? And don't forget, the whole world, when you look at the statistics, the population of the whole world, now we are over 8 billion people. We've crossed 8 billion. Only 7% identify in one form or the other as homosexuals. How then do they constitute the determining factor for legislation? And in Ghana, 33 million people, we have less than 100,000 people identifying. That's less than 0.01% of our population. How then do we take our entire national policy and revolve it around the whims and caprices and what for like I've stated scientifically is a mental disorder? Formulate public policy around the mental disorder? Absolutely not.
It's getting interesting, but we have to go for a short break. We'll be right back.
Everyone needs the perfect snack to munch on during a fun moment.
Wow.
Enjoy the tasty McBerry Twist cupcakes, deliciously baked and packaged for a sweet treat. Premium quality cakes baked with love for all, enriched in butter and milk.
Yummy. Oh,
McBerry Twist cupcakes, simply irresistible. Try one today. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. We've been speaking to Honorable Sam George, MP for Ningo Prampram. MP, you mentioned Ghanaian values.
Yes.
So what are these Ghanaian values, family values? Because, I mean, I think it's relative. What you consider as a family value will be different from what someone considers as a family value.
Well, it's not necessarily what I consider as Ghanaian family values. When we talk about Ghanaian family values in relation to this particular bill, we're talking about values on what the Ghanaian family values are on sexuality and what a family is. Who is a family? Is a family a father, mother, and children, where the father and mother are biological male and female as assigned at birth? Those are not Sam George's views. Those are general acceptable Ghanaian family values in all the traditional areas in Ghana. Okay, and don't forget that this bill has been put together in conjunction with the National House of Chiefs, which is a constitutionally mandated custodian of Ghanaian family values. Has representation from all the 16 regions of Ghana and about almost 270 ethnic or traditional authorities in the country are represented at the National House of Chiefs. And so when you take the bill, our position on what constitutes a crime or unnatural carnal knowledge in expanding Section 104 of Act 29 is based on the things that our traditions across the whole country do not accept. Our traditions across the whole country do not accept a man sleeping with a man. And you see, I keep telling people that, people say, oh, it's not true, you don't know what our culture is. And I say, no, I know what our culture is. Ghanaian culture is defined by our language. In fact, every culture is defined by its language. The etymology of the language shows you the history of the language and everything in that about the people. Now, anything that is new to the culture, there is no word in the language for it. So, and that's why I always contend and say, when people say, oh, the white man brought Christianity to us, I laugh. I say, our forefathers knew Christianity. Because Christianity talks about the supreme God, who we call Yahweh. But we knew him in our various languages. In our various languages, if you use Akan, for example, in Akan, there are names for the smaller, lesser gods. And then there is the supreme God that in Hebrew, is called Yahweh, that as Christians we worship. In our local Akan language, we refer to him as Odugumankuma. Odumankuma Nyankupong. He is the supreme being. When you come to Ghana, he's Atana Anyumo. So we knew the supreme being even before the white man brought us his name Yahweh. But when you take things that were alien or are alien to our culture, our language grows to define it using phrases, not words. So you can't find a word in our language for homosexuality, in any Ghanaian language. I dare anybody, the professors and whoever, I dare anybody to show me a word in any Ghanaian language, over 70 Ghanaian languages. Show me any of them that has one word for homosexuality. What you have is phrases. So for example, computers. Computers were not there when our our languages were formed. So we describe computers. Abefo ifidi. It's not a word, it's a phrase. Telephones were not there. So we refer to it as ahumatrufo. So we don't have a word for it. It's the same way homosexuality, gays, we don't have a word for it. So we describe them as kojo ahoye ne nyama tise besia, kojo besia. It's a phrase. We don't have a word for it. So it's alien to our culture. And so this bill is fighting anything that's alien to our culture. Our culture doesn't accept two women marrying and having and raising a family. So in the bill, we ban adoption by homosexuals. Lesbians or gays cannot adopt a child because it is against our culture. In our culture, you will never see an anum come to sit down to officiate a traditional wedding between two men. So we ban marriages by same-sex couple. So when we say we are pushing Ghanaian family values, it's the values we all grew up with. And we are not importing any new values. Sam George is not writing any new values. My colleagues are not writing any new values. We are simply codifying what exists in our culture, in our tradition, and exists in our existing legislation. Because the ban on adoption by homosexuals is already existing in the Children's Act. If you take the amendment to the Children's Act that was passed in 2019, it is there. If you take the Marriages Act, we are strengthening the Marriages Act. Because the Marriages Act says it should be a union between a man and a woman. We are only saying that the man and woman must be biologically determined at birth. Because today you can say man and woman, and the man standing before you was born as a woman, and the woman standing before you was born as a man, and they've transgendered. And they will tell you that they meet the criteria. So we are saying that it is your sex as determined at birth. I mean, so it is not any rocket science. We're just entrenching our laws.
To you, is sexual preference a human rights issue?
If you read the 1992, again, you see all the talk about this whole thing. They're not sexual. And you see, this is at the base of everything. There's a difference between sex and gender. There are two different things. The LGBTQ group tried to make them one and the same to confuse the world. But you can't confuse Sam George and his people. Because we know what the difference is. Sex is a binary construct that is biological and determined by God. You can't change it. Sex is male and female. Shikena. Finish. There is nothing beyond male and female. It is on the basis of that even computer coders use 0 and 1 as their binary codes. To be a man or to be born a male, your father's Y chromosome must match with an X chromosome from your mother. For the fetus to then have the XY chromosome for you to become male. If it is the father's X that matches with the female's X, because the women carry XX, men carry XY. If my X matches my wife's X, our offspring is a girl. If my Y matches my wife's X, our offspring is a boy. You can't change it. There is no A, there is no W, there is no V. It is either XY or XX. And that is why for those of them who claim that they have transgendered from men to women, and they are unlucky and then they get prostate, you see the person going there as a woman, dressed as a woman with makeup, and then she's treating prostate cancer.
But I haven't seen that.
Oh, there's evidence of that in the UK.
Okay.
Where transgender women are now having to deal with prostate cancer. You can't cheat God. So sex is a biological construct, male or female. But gender is not. Gender is a social construct determined by society. So gender allows multiple identities. That's why even among the LGBTQ group, in some countries, certain identities are recognized.
Okay.
In some countries, they don't exist because it depends on the country where you are.
Okay.
For me, the last time I checked, they were 48. Now I'm hearing that they have got it to 100. You understand me? But for me, it is 100 shades of madness. Because gender is simply what anybody or any group chooses to have. Now, when you take our constitution and our international statutes we have assigned ourselves to or signed up to, gender does not appear in any of them.
Okay.
Now, let me read to you the African Charter. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Good. This is what the African Charter on Human and People's Rights is in Article 2. Every individual shall be entitled to the enjoyment of the rights and freedoms recognized and guaranteed in the present charter without distinction of any kind, such as race, ethnic group, color, sex, not gender, sex, language, religion, political or any other opinion, national and social origin, fortune, birth or other status. There's no gender there.
Okay.
So gender cannot be a right to be discriminated against because it's not being recognized by the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. Now, if you read Article 17 of that same charter, it says every individual shall have the right to education.
Okay.
2, every individual may freely take part in the cultural life of his community. And this is the most important part. The 3, the promotion and protection of morals and traditional values recognized by the community shall be the duty of the state. So you see the African Charter, we have signed it. They quote this African Charter and say that Ghana is breaking it if you approve this bill. They don't know that we read. 17.3 says the promotion and protection of morals. Who determines moral? Moral society, the church, the mosque, traditional authority, and traditional values, which we discussed earlier on, recognized by the community, meaning by majority of us, not by individuals who have aligned themselves with mental disorder, shall be the duty of the state. Now, you see, in 18 of the same charter, it says the family shall be the natural unit and basis of society. It shall be protected by the state. Then in 18.2, it says the state shall have the duty to assist the family, which is the custodian of morals and traditional values recognized by the community. So the article says that my family is the custodian of morals and values. If I decide that my children should be brought up in a heterosexual world, I have every right and the state has a duty to protect that decision I have taken, to prevent the perversion of homosexuals from being taught to my children. So when you bring a legislation to that effect, it is right. Now, if you even read the UN Declaration on Human Rights, again, Article 2, it gives you all the grounds on which you cannot discriminate. It says race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion. It doesn't say gender. And that's why I took my time to explain to you the difference between sex and gender. In all of this international legislation, there is no reference to gender. Then even in there, in 2.1, it says that in 16.1, in Article 16.1, it says men and women of full age, without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion, have the right to marry and found a family. It didn't say men and men or women and women. It said men and women of full age. the UN Declaration.
Okay.
If you leave there and go to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it says in Article 18.3, listen, freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs. So it says you have the freedom to a religion, you have a freedom to a belief, fine. But it says the freedom to manifest your religion or belief may be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law and necessary to protect, listen, public safety, public order, public health, or morals, and the fundamental rights and freedoms of others. So even the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights says you must, your belief system and your religion can only be practiced and manifested if it does not affect public morals.
But
So you see that when I said rights are not absolute, and I can give you more, because again, listen, in 18.4, it says the state parties to the present covenant undertake to have respect for the liberty of parents, and where applicable, legal guardians to ensure the religious and moral education of their children in conformity with their own convictions. This is Article 18.4 of the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. It says me as a parent, I have the right to determine how my children must be educated in line with my own beliefs. So why should my child be attacked with the information of LGBTQ by the cabal? Why must they be seeking to introduce things like that into our educational curriculum through CSE? And you say that I don't have a right to speak about it. The international laws give me, as a parent, the rights. So when they say Ghana is breaching international laws, I tell you, these are a bunch of people who misguide, misinform, carry out disinformation, and use the untruths that they peddle to create a false reality, because actually it's a mental condition. People who have mental conditions live in a false reality. So they create a false reality and they live in it. And we must identify them and say that your mental condition cannot become the norm for all of us. No, it's like all mad people walking on the streets, those who are manifesting their madness, telling all of us that those of us dressed properly are wrong. And we must all wear tattered clothes and carry unkempt hair and go naked on the road because we want to respect the right of mad people to be naked.
Well, for the mental condition, I wouldn't really agree with you on that. That is your personal stance.
It is not my personal stance. Look, and I can give you, I said, look, until 1970, the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, classified homosexuality as a mental disorder along with pedophilia, along with necrophilia, zoophilia, and fetishism. All of this, I'm telling you, it was in 1974. This is fact. It's not me saying it. It's the American Psychiatrists Association. It's not me.
But
it was a mental condition. They took it out of the list of mental conditions, not on the basis of science, but on the basis of a poll that was conducted that had 10,000 respondents. 10,000 respondents. And even that one, the 10,000 respondents, 64% were not in favor of taking it out. However, they went ahead to do it. So the facts are clear.